I'm not going to be formal about this. My name is First Vice President Angela Holmes. I'm here representing the East Coast chapter of Tuskegee. As well as General Bowie. He's a member. But he's also, let me tell you about my relationship with him in the community. He sits on the board for Andrews Federal Credit Union. And we do a lot of things in the community between financial education and Andrews. This weekend, as a matter of fact, my big sister, Rosalind Bishop, is back home giving book bags and such to the children in the community in Prince George's County. And yes. General Bowie and the board are responsible for making sure that kind of money is set aside for our efforts in the community. So let's give him a hand for that. The other thing I wanted to say is please keep him in prayer. He sent his mother on to glory a couple of weeks ago, and we acknowledge that. However, you know, when you're at a funeral, there are things that you learn about people. Okay, his mom is and was a bad mama. Even the minister said so. You ever have a mother that kind of gives you that look when you're cutting up? Fellas, I'm talking to the men right now. Your mom give you the Evelina look? Okay, so that was discussed, and not even in his house. It was the neighbor kids that said that. Yeah, man, if Mrs. Bowie looked at you, man, you knew to straighten up and fly right. You didn't have to worry about your parents getting to you because she was going to get to you. All right? So I say that to say that he comes from good stock, right? We want to embrace him and his wife because I've adopted another sister. Many of y'all know in here that I have adopted you. So I got a whole bunch of brothers and sisters in here. Ain't that right, Marv? So, without further ado, I'd like to bring to the stage General Robert Bowie.
Good afternoon, everybody. President Butler documented original Tuskegee Airmen and surviving spouses, distinguished guests, members of the Tuskegee Airmen, Inc., and to all the attendees of the 2025 Tuskegee Airmen Convention Military Luncheon. Thank you, First Vice President Angela Holmes, for the introduction, and thanks to all the Convention Planning Committee for making this a great event, the 50th Annual National Convention and Business Meeting. Before I get started, I have to give you a disclaimer. I want you to ensure that I am here as Robert Bowie, retired Air Force officer of 34 years, a member of the East Coast chapter, Tuskegee Airmen, ECTI, and current founder and owner of Quantum Leap Services. My speech, my words about the Tuskegee Airmen legacy of excellence do not reflect the opinions or policies of the United States Air Force or the Department of Defense. Please make sure that's documented. I want to keep my retirement check. I suggest we are here at this conference to show our gratitude and to say thank you for the service and accomplishments, as well as recognize the nearly 15,000 men and women from various military professions who comprise the Tuskegee Airmen. We are here to highlight a group of men and women serving their country and upholding the words of the Constitution. We are here to highlight and educate people about the Tuskegee Airmen experience. We are here to embrace acts and events of the Tuskegee Airmen and clearly to support the organizations such as Tuskegee Airmen, Inc. that embrace the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen. We are here to remember the Tuskegee Airmen that made the ultimate sacrifice. We are here to acknowledge the acts of the Tuskegee Airmen that saved fellow servicemen's lives and contributed to the Allies winning the war in Europe and ultimately winning World War II. The Tuskegee Airmen legacy is a lesson in faith, a lesson in leadership, a lesson in teamwork, a lesson in devotion, and represents what people can accomplish when given the opportunity. Based on the folks in the crowd, I won't go over the experience in detail, but you can imagine what was going on in the 1930s and 40s. Lynchings, Air War College putting out that blacks can't lead. Fortunately, President Roosevelt officially activated the all-black War II fighter squadron, the Tuskegee Airmen experiment. This experiment was expected to fail. The US government was just allowing to move forward just in case we needed a few pilots. To me, this is a miracle. In light of this racism African Americans face, these men volunteered to be aviators, to prepare for combat, to potentially ultimately give their life for their country. A country that did not treat them fairly or equally. This is truly service. This is the beginning of the Tuskegee Airmen legacy of excellence. It started 12 aviation students and Captain Benjamin Davis reported to Tuskegee to start flight training in July 1941. Captain Davis and 4 other students successfully passed, becoming the first African-American pilots in military history in March of 1942. Following that class, as previously mentioned, 15,000 Tuskegee Airmen completed training in Alabama, with approximately 996 airmen being pilots, with 352 of them deploying for combat. The Tuskegee Airmen flew over 15,000 individual missions and shot down 112 enemy airplanes in World War II. The Red Tails, the 99th Squadron, the 332nd Fighter Group were the preferred escort units. The Tuskegee Airmen earned over 150 distinguished flying crosses for heroism and extraordinary achievement while participating in aerial flight. I know many of you know that story. Because of the acts, the accomplishments of the Tuskegee Airmen, along with other things that were going on at the time, President Truman was moved to issue Executive Order 9811 to desegregate the military. This is an absolute game changer. Military units had to be integrated and career fields had to be open to all. Black servicemen were no longer just cooks and drivers. This is a major accomplishment because it initiated desegregation of the entire federal government. So the efforts and accomplishments of the Tuskegee Airmen not only impacted the military, but the entire federal government, and some would suggest was the model for integration throughout the world. Raised in Baltimore suburbs, I was unaware of the Tuskegee Airmen service and accomplishments. Fortunately, I was exposed to the Tuskegee Airmen legacy in college at Air Force ROTC and early in my military career. I'm thankful for the hard work of members like yourselves, the Tuskegee Airmen, Inc., members of regional chapters, family members of Tuskegee Airmen, as well as a few motion pictures and many books available to keep this legacy alive. I appreciate the opportunities and events like this, like we're having today, to pay tribute to the Tuskegee Airmen. How can the Tuskegee Airmen legacy impact you? From my personal experience, I was fortunate and had the opportunity to meet several Tuskegee Airmen. I will share 3 of these encounters that impacted me. In late 2011, I had the opportunity to meet Tuskegee Airman Lieutenant Colonel Herbert E. Carter. I was going through a tough point in my career, separated from my family. After 10 years of hard work on the active duty side or pushing time, I was at Air War College in Montgomery, Alabama, grinding through school without a follow-on assignment. I thought to myself, do I really want to go back to the base and wait in line for an hour plus for a signature and a picture? God bless me. Short version of that story, I ended up waiting 2 hours for Lieutenant Colonel to sign my book. I still have that book. It was a source for this speech today. And he also signed my model P-51D plane and took a photo with me. He smiled and asked a few questions. He treated everybody with respect and provided each of us encouragement. My takeaway, if this Tuskegee Airman is still representing and mentoring people in his early 90s, I need to take the bull by the horns and finish Air War College strong and be ready for whatever assignment I get. Lieutenant Colonel Carter gave me perspective by remembering the Tuskegee Airmen legacy. And at that moment, that's exactly what I needed. About 2.5 years ago, I got a call from a fellow general, Brigadier General Terrence Adams. A lot of folks in this room probably know 2A. and he asked me to represent the Air Force, participate in Lieutenant Colonel Ivan Ware's 100th birthday celebration, original Tuskegee Airman. I attended that reception, and I'm talking to a man that looks like Colonel Ware, but it must be his son. He was the life of the party, talking and mingling with everybody. I eventually found out it was the man himself. Those 2 days were 2 of the best days of my career. I watched him tell stories, weaving lessons and suggestions along the way. I watched the love of his fellow Tuskegee Airmen, his fellow members of ECTI, his Howard University family, his Qs, his friends, his caretakers, and family. I felt the presence of the Tuskegee Airman legacy. It simply was an overwhelming, positive experience. When I retired, I sent him an invitation to his godson, Dwayne, and him. Lieutenant Colonel Ware attended the 2-hour ceremony and stayed for 2.5 hours of the after party. There are more pictures of Colonel Ware with my family than I have. He showed up because I showed up for him. Lieutenant Colonel Ware returned the favor by inviting me to sit with him as he received an award at last year's gala. Sadly, he passed shortly after the conference. But in March this year, Lieutenant Colonel Ware reached down and touched me again. His church service brought back memories and gave me a broader understanding of Lieutenant Colonel Ware's lifetime of service. The next day at the burial at Arlington Cemetery, Lieutenant Colonel Ware received full honors with the Air Force Honor Guard and Caisson team, marching about 3/4 mile from Fort Miles Chapel through the Arlington Cemetery. As we slowly drove behind that honor guard, I noticed hundreds of people moving towards the roadside, walking away from the graves and other things they were attending to. They were taking off their hats and rendering salutes to Lieutenant Colonel Ware. It was a surreal moment. Arlington was full of people that day. It was bursting at the seams because many people were there to honor their loved ones during spring break. But they stopped to render a salute to Colonel Ware. When we got to the grave site, the funeral director asked us to stop and look towards the Pentagon. And the F-16s came across the sky in a 2-ship formation. The 2 F-16s were flown by 2 African-American pilots from the 113th DC Air National Guard, my former unit. The legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen was alive and well as we laid Lieutenant Colonel Ware to rest. My last Tuskegee Airman story is about Lieutenant Colonel Hardy, one of the remaining living Tuskegee Airmen fighter pilots. We were working together as engineers on a panel for the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, AIAA. Once again, I was overly impressed that Lieutenant Colonel Hardy in his late 90s was flying to Baltimore from Florida to participate in a panel with future aviation professionals one day, and then working at Morgan State with other Morgan State students the following day. I watched him in awe, telling how he transitioned from a high school graduate without a driver's license to a fighter pilot in 2 years flying combat missions over Germany. A few months later, he returned to Baltimore, and he served on a sustainability energy panel at the then called Black Engineer of the Year Bayer Conference, where he also received a Lifetime Award. The Tuskegee legacy of excellence was alive and well. I mentioned these 3 Tuskegee Airmen in my personal experience with each one of them because these men had the secret sauce. They are definitely a living legacy. As Tuskegee Airmen, they did the impossible as they continued to challenge themselves throughout their careers. Colonel Carter went on to complete his Air Force successful career, earned master's and bachelor's degrees, and served on multiple dean positions at Tuskegee University. Lieutenant Colonel Ware completed his Air Force career, earned a PhD, and served as administrator at Howard University. Lieutenant Colonel Hardy retired from the Air Force after completing combat tours in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, plus earning a graduate degree in engineering for his second career at Boeing. With the Tuskegee Airmen experience, these men were driven, to perform at a high level, and we're committed to bringing others along. Okay, so you're sitting there. I've told you a little bit about the Tuskegee experiment and how the Tuskegee Airmen directly impacted me. Why is that important in 2025? Why is that important now? I suggest that the Tuskegee legacy of excellence is more important now than ever. Young adults and children, let's say folks under the age of 35, we got a few in the room, have just encountered the COVID situation and currently are watching a particularly unstable, unknown environment involving major changes in U.S. policy, such as the removal of DEI. How are all people, especially minorities, going to take on the new technology today, like the Tuskegee Airmen took on aviation and military leadership? Who will be the Tuskegee Airmen of artificial intelligence? Who will be the Tuskegee Airmen of cybersecurity? Who will be the Tuskegee Airmen of quantum computing? Who will be the Tuskegee Airmen of nanotechnology? I don't know these answers to these questions, but just as the Tuskegee Airmen broke through the barriers in the skies, we must break through the boundaries in technology to reach new heights. Their determination and skill paved the way for future generations. And similarly, our pursuit of advancements in AI, artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, and beyond will pave the way for a brighter future for all of us. The Tuskegee Airmen proved with courage and perseverance the impossible becomes possible. Today, we face new challenges requiring innovative solutions, and it's up to us to push those boundaries of what's possible. By embracing new technology, we can soar to new heights and achieve greatness. Let's take the lessons of the Tuskegee Airmen's courage and determination and commitment to excellence to propel us forward in pursuit of technological advancements. Before I go, I would like to leave you with a few personal thoughts, if I may. As a Christian, I often think, and I think many people think, what would Jesus do? Right? Why don't we change that question a little bit? What do you think? Just add, what would a Tuskegee Airman would do? And I'll put that on a personal touch for me. I'm a 60-year-old guy. I've got to look at things in the future. Should I go on and get my educational doctorate? Should I get a PhD? Should I get a PMP? Should I take a flying lesson for the first time? What would a Tuskegee Airman would do, right? All the above. Yeah. I did start a new company, so I got one of them done. 2, my last thought. In the last 5 years, in all seriousness, 44 states have passed or considered legislation to limit teachers' ability to teach Black history. Please keep that data point in mind and continue to support the Tuskegee Airmen and their support organizations. Thanks to each and every one of you already here supporting the Tuskegee Airmen, and once again, thanks to the Tuskegee Airmen for providing hope to all of us through their accomplishments. Let's keep the Tuskegee Airmen legacy alive and well. Thank you.
Thank you, Brigadier General Bowie, for sharing your experience and insight, your words of reflection and counsel, and for taking the time to join and inspire us here today. General Bowie, if you would remain or return to stage, I would ask our national president to join you on stage for a special presentation, and thank you.
It just gives me another opportunity to say thank you to General Bowie for taking time out of your very busy schedule. We want to thank you for your service to our country, and we definitely want to thank you for your service to Tuskegee Airmen Incorporated, but most importantly, service to our community, because that is where the impact is going to be in the future. And rest assured, when the gift arrives at your home, just take a selfie with it. Ma'am, make sure he does that so that we know that you got it safe and sound. Thank you for your understanding, and we want you to enjoy the rest of your time at our convention here in New Orleans. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.